Welcome back to Panalysis, a new video series where in every episode we look at a different panel by a different comic artist. This gives us the opportunity to dive a little bit more deeply into one panel. Oftentimes on my videos, we're looking through full artist editions or a whole body of work by a particular comic artist or illustrator. And sometimes it's great to just pause a little bit, slow down, and focus on what makes just one of those comic panels by that particular artist so effective. And in doing this sort of like analysis of it, hopefully we can get a better understanding of not only how that artist created what they created, but how we might, as creators, be able to take what we've learned from that and bring it into our own work. And if you're not a comic creator or aspiring comic creator, and you just love comic art and reading comics, hopefully this gives you a little bit of a different way of looking at the art of telling a comic story visually, and perhaps provides a deeper appreciation for it. So in this video, we're going to be looking at a panel by the comic artist David Aja. I think that's how you say it. Is it Aja? All I know is that his work is really, really good. Some of you, like myself, might be familiar with his run on Hawkeye. I think this was, at this point, probably 10, maybe 12 years ago. But it was a very different kind of take on the character. The writing itself I thought was really good, but the visual storytelling of David Aja, I think, is what really brought the whole comic to life. There's definitely, in my opinion, like a Mazzucchelli influence there, which definitely speaks to me and my sensibilities. There's also elements of like European comics in his style. He may be an overseas artist himself, but so much of his strengths as a visual storyteller and comic artist are on display in this Hawkeye series. And in this episode, technically we're looking at one panel, but the way David breaks this panel up into essentially 4 panels, I thought was really clever. And that's why I wanted to focus in on this particular panel, or perhaps series of panels. I forget what page number and issue of Hawkeye this comes from, but I'll try to remember to put that somewhere here on the screen as I talk about it. But one of the things that's so hard to communicate in comics is a sense of time and movement. There's a lot of different ways and theories of looking at that. In fact, Scott McCloud in Understanding Comics spends a whole chapter talking just about that. And if you've read enough comics or made comics yourself, you know that it's one of the hardest things to communicate, but when it works really well. And this is a way for David Aja to kind of break up this one particular panel and get across the idea of these 2 characters moving through this one particular space. It happens to be a sort of like ballroom dinner party kind of function. Or actually, I think it's like the lobby of a theater during intermission or something. But by showing this one large panel and then using these little inset panels as a way of moving these 2 particular figures across the panel diagonally, I think it helps move your eye in a really clever way while feeling as though your eye is walking through the crowd of people. This could have easily just been broken up into 3 independent panels on the top tier of that page, but instead David Aja kind of carved out these panels outside of a larger panel that is like the establishing shot of where you are. And one of the goals of comic art is really wanting to put the reader into that scene. And I think by virtue of actually putting the panels themselves into the establishing shot is a really clever way to evoke that sense of feeling like you're in that space. Now, I've seen comic artists use this technique sometimes without the inset panels. So maybe sometimes it will be just one panel and a character or a couple of characters might be moving across that panel. And because they might be colored differently from the rest of the background environment, or perhaps highlighted or outlined in a different way, it doesn't read as though there's like multiple versions of this character in the same setting. It reads as though the character is moving throughout that scene and that panel. But I think putting these little inset panels around the action helps make that very clear to the reader that although this is happening within one larger panel, this is the same characters moving throughout it. I think too, by enclosing them in a frame, it sets a framework in a way of how much time is happening in between these different frames, literally by showing how far they walked. Without the context of that larger panel in the background, if you just isolated these three panels, they would work in sequential format, but you may not know exactly how much time or how much distance those characters are moving from panel to panel. This is a way to actually spell that out. Now, that's not something that you have to do all the time. I think most times in comics, there's a lot of different ways of implying that. And I think also oftentimes you don't even need to imply that. But in a setting like this and in a scene like this, I think it's just a really interesting and helpful choice. Also, throughout this whole comic, there's kind of like a cinematic, serialized TV show kind of pacing and vibe to the whole story. And so I think this type of pacing really contributes to that overall sort of like cinematic approach. Anyway, what do you think of this panel? Is it as clever as I think it is? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, also please be sure to hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, consider subscribing to the channel. I make a lot of videos like this, as well as longer videos where we go through a particular artist, art books, comic books, all that good stuff. Also, if you want to see more of my own work, process work, behind the scenes stuff, some illustration and comic work that I do myself, be sure to check out my Patreon page. I'll leave a link for that in the description below. I'll also try to remember to leave the info about this particular Hawkeye story, the issue, the collection, all that good stuff, in case you're not familiar with the series and you want to check it out yourself. That's all I got for this episode of Panalysis. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions of other panels and artists that you want me to look at and dissect in this way, leave those in the comments below. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next episode. Take care. I just wanted to remind you that it is February. That means it is time for the second annual 28-panel comic making challenge. This is a month-long challenge where we make one panel of comics every day for the entire month of February. That's 28 comic panels in 28 days. You'd be surprised at the kind of story you could potentially tell in 28 panels. Last year, myself, as well as many of you, took part in this month-long challenge. It was a lot of fun and really awesome. I created a 28-panel sort of stream of consciousness comic. It turned out to be 9 pages at the end of it. I really loved what I did, and I wound up rewriting it and redrawing the whole thing to improve upon it throughout the rest of the year, turn that into a 10-page black and white comic story. None of that would have happened if I didn't push myself to do this one panel a day for the whole month. So if you want to know any more about this 28-panel comic making challenge for the year of 2026, I made a whole guide sheet for it, as well as an official word prompt list. You don't have to use the word prompt list, but it could be a good springboard for ideas if you're stuck. Anyway, the guide sheet and the word prompt list will be up on my Instagram in a highlight dedicated to 28 panels for 2026. Also, if you want to share your panels online, be sure to hashtag 28panels. Also, on my Patreon, I have a dedicated chat feature. That's where we share some of our own work, as well as cool, interesting stuff we might find in relation to comic art and illustration. It's in that chat where I'm hoping we could all share our panels on a daily basis, provide feedback and encouragement for each other, and also just act as a sense of accountability. A month-long challenge can sometimes be tough, and doing it with a group and being inspired by seeing what everyone else is doing could really keep you engaged for the duration of that month. So consider signing up to my Patreon at any tier. Any tier level will get you access to that chat. Anyway, I'm really excited to do these panels myself this month, and I'm really excited to see what you create.